Hey, it's N.K.O, 11th of June 2026, midnight 13. I was gonna wait until tomorrow to do this, but then I remembered there's probably some people who's not long started work, so they might be listening. Reading on from Yoruba Legends by N.K.O, page 18, The Three Magicians. A certain king had engaged in a series of wars, during which he employed three magicians or medicine men to make charms for him so that he might destroy his enemies. At the end of the war, these three magicians came to the king and humbly asked to be allowed to return home. The king foolishly refused, and at this the magicians said, "We asked your permission out of courtesy, O king, but we can very easily depart without it." Thereupon the first magician fell down on the ground and disappeared. The second threw a ball of twine into the air, climbed up the thread and disappeared likewise. The third magician, N.K.O, remained standing. "It is your turn to disappear," said the king, trembling with anger, "or I will slay you." "You cannot harm me," replied the magician. At this the king ordered him to be beheaded, but the sword broke in two, and the executioner's arm withered away. The king then ordered him to be speared, but the spear crumpled up and was useless. An attempt was made to crush the magician with a rock, but it rolled over his body as lightly as a child's ball. The king then sent for the magician's wife and asked her to reveal his secret charm. At last, the woman confessed that if they took one blade of grass from the thatched roof of a house, they could easily cut off his head with it. This was done, and the magician's head rolled off and stuck to the king's hand. It could not by any means be removed. When food and drink was brought to the king, the head consumed it all, so that the king seemed likely to die. Magicians were hastily summoned from all over the kingdom, but the head laughed at all their charms and remained fast. Finally came one who prostrated himself before the head and cried out, "Who am I to oppose you, great N.K.O? I come only because the king commands me." To this N.K.O replied, "You are wiser than all the rest." And the head fell at once to the ground, where it became a flowing river, which to this day is called Odo N.K.O, or N.K.O's river. The magician's wife was likewise changed into a river, but because she had betrayed him, N.K.O commanded the river not to flow, and it became instead a stagnant pool. Isokun and the baby. A certain king, Dekun, had a wife named Isokun, who bore him no children, on which account there was great unhappiness in the palace. One day Isokun disappeared and was absent for many weeks, and though search was made, no trace of her could be found. The truth was that Isokun had set out to visit the shrines of all the gods, in the hope that one of them would promise her a child. But though she travelled far and wide, the gods of all the trees and streams and rocks refused her prayer. When she was at last nearing home again, she came upon a poor woman asleep by the wayside with her baby 2 days old. Isokun stole the baby and hastened to the palace, where she informed the king that she had disappeared in order to give him the joyous surprise of his little son. There were great rejoicings in the palace, sacrifices were made, and the drums beat loudly. Meanwhile, the real mother awoke and discovered that her baby had been stolen. She ran into the town distracted and insisted on searching in every house, but without success. At last, she came to the palace and insisted on entering there also, which was possible at that moment because all were celebrating the arrival of the king's heir. All this time the baby cried with hunger, and as Isokun could not feed him, she invented other reasons for the crying and sought in vain to pacify him without arousing suspicion. Drawn by the cries, the mother entered and snatched the baby to her breast, where it was at once contented. In a few moments, the deception was made clear. The mother departed with her child, and Isokun, ashamed and fearing the anger of the king, fled from the palace and never returned. I will read one more, and it is The Twin Brothers. A certain Yoruba king, Ajaka, had a favourite wife of whom he was very fond, but alas, for his hopes, she gave birth to twins. At that time, it was a universal custom to destroy twins immediately at birth, and the mother with them. But the king had not the heart to put this cruel law into execution, and he secretly charged one of his nobles to conduct the royal mother and her babes to a remote place where they might live in safety. Here, the twin brothers grew to manhood and loved one another greatly. They were inseparable, and neither of them had any pleasure except in the company of the other. When one brother began to speak, the other completed his phrase, so harmonious were their thoughts and inclinations. Their mother, before she died, informed them of their royal birth, and from this moment they spent the time vainly regretting their exile, and wishing that the law of the country had made it possible for them to reign. At last they received the news that the king their father was dead, leaving no heir, and it seemed to the brothers that one of them ought to go to the capital and claim the throne. But which? To settle this point, they decided to cast stones, and the one who made the longer throw should claim the throne, and afterwards send for his brother to share in his splendour. The lot fell on the younger of the twins, and he set off to the capital, announced himself as the Olophane's son, and soon became king with the consent of all the people. As soon as possible he sent for his brother, who henceforth lived with him in the palace and was treated with honour and distinction. But alas, jealousy began to overcome his brotherly affection, and one day, as he walked with the king by the side of the river, he pushed his brother suddenly into the water, where he was drowned. He then gave out in the palace that his brother was weary of kingship and had left the country, desiring him to reign in his stead. The king had certainly disappeared, and as no suspicion fell on the twin brother, he was made king and so realised his secret admission. Some time later, happening to pass by the very spot where his brother had been drowned, he saw a fish rise to the surface of the water and begin to sing, "Your brother lies here, your brother lies here." The king was very much afraid. He took up a sharp stone and killed the fish. But another day, when he passed the spot, attended by his nobles and shielded by the royal umbrella made of the skins of rare animals, the river itself rose into waves and sang, "Your brother lies here, your brother lies here." In astonishment, the courtiers stopped to listen. Their suspicions were aroused, and when they looked into the water, they found the body of the king. Thus, the secret of his disappearance was disclosed, and the wicked brother was rejected in horror by his people. At this disgrace, he took poison and so died. Oh, okay, one more, it's really short. How leopard got his spots. At one time, the leopard was coloured like a lion, and he had no dark markings, but he was pursued by Akiti, the renowned hunter, and feared that he might be slain. To avoid this, he ate the roots of a certain magic plant which had the effect of making him invulnerable to any of the hunter's weapons. Soon afterwards, Akiti saw him as he slipped through the dense undergrowth of the forest, but though he shot his poisoned arrows, Leopard escaped. But where each arrow struck him, there appeared a dark mark, and now, though hunters still pursue him, he is rarely caught, but his body is covered with the marks of the arrows, so that as he goes among the trees, he looks exactly like the mingling of the sun and shadow. Brilliant. Thanks for listening.